So the winner for the Donner Prize for 2024 is Seized by Uncertainty by Kevin Quigley, Caitlin Lowe, Sarah Moore, and Brianna Wolf, published by McGill Queen's University Press.
So, for people who studied how to deal with uncertainty over the last 5 years, you would think we would be better prepared to deal with such a surprise. This is a surprise, and I am not prepared. On behalf of the authors, Sarah Moore, Brianna Wolf, and Caitlin Lowe, I'd like to thank the Donner Foundation for the excellent work it does in promoting public policy research and debate in Canada, and everyone in the organization who worked hard to make tonight's event such a success. We'd also like to thank the judges for recognizing our work in this way. It's very humbling, and we are grateful. We'd also like to congratulate the other distinguished nominees for their outstanding work. We'd like to thank everyone at McGill Queen's University Press for supporting us through the publication process. They committed to publishing this book when it was just a 4-page outline, and they stuck with it through a rigorous and helpful review process. My teenage daughter recently got a job at the mall. She came home exhausted at the end of day one and observed, "Dad, you really got to ask for the job description before you accept a job." And so it was with this book. Because of the dynamic nature of the pandemic, the research required commitment even when you didn't really know where it was going. There were many late nights and lost weekends. With that in mind, I'd like to thank our friends and family who put up with a 4-year research project whose hours were poorly defined, and as long as you were awake and thinking, whose office was never completely closed. The McEachern Institute for Public Policy and Governance at Dalhousie University was a hub for our research and played a central role for collecting information and generating debate. I'd like to thank Daryl Dexter, an honorary distinguished fellow of the McEachern Institute, is here tonight. Daryl chaired a number of the numerous panels, roundtables, and graduate classes we held at the Institute on the subject of the pandemic. I'd also like to thank the original donors whose gift enabled the McEachern Institute for Public Policy and Governance at Dalhousie University back in 2015. In particular, I'd like to thank Colin McDonald, who is here tonight. He is the chair of the McEachern Institute Advisory Board and a former chief of staff to the late Honorable Alan J. McEachern. A skillful orator, Alan McEachern once advised a colleague, "No one ever complained about a speech being too short," and with that in mind, I'll keep my comments brief. It seems appropriate to me that this research was carried out at an institute named after Alan McEachern. Alan J., as he's often referred to in the Maritimes, was born in poverty in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia in the 1920s. He lost 3 siblings to epidemics at the time. All were under the age of 10. He wrote in his memoirs that his mother never recovered from the loss. When his father retired from working in the mines, he had few savings or assets, no health care, and no pension. This context shaped Alan McEachern. He was inspired by the anti-Ganesh movement of the 1940s and 50s that believed in betterment through hard work, education, and community mindedness. The movement resisted the mounting extremism of political ideologies of the post-war period. McEachern would be among the young thought leaders of the 1950s and 60s from different political parties who, through considerable political debate and compromise, and during minority governments, led transformative social change in Canada that enabled government to better the lives of its citizens through universal health care, labour reform, and a stronger social safety net to help the marginalized. Many of these concepts, health care, labour rights, and providing assistance to the economically disadvantaged, were tested during the pandemic. I've studied government responses to crisis for nearly 25 years. When a system is under extreme pressure, the system's strengths and the system's weaknesses are exposed. Canada amassed considerable scientific data from around the globe and used it to forecast the threat and how to address it. The country emerged as one of the most vaccinated countries in the world and one with a comparatively low death count. The health system and those who work in it were pushed to extremes but didn't buckle. We borrowed sums that only wealthy countries can access quickly and used it to provide economic support to the many who needed it. Still, more than 37,000 people died from the pandemic, and those who were most vulnerable when it comes to health and wealth frequently faced additional barriers and paid a heavy and underappreciated price. The process was at times expensive and narrowly focused, and we were not always adept at addressing debate, trade-offs, and different degrees of risk tolerance. Despite early warnings, at times our institutions were ill-prepared for what was to come. While the pandemic seemed overwhelming and the response may have seemed inevitable at the time, in fact, these events are shaped by a particular social, political, technological, and economic context. We live in an age that is fascinated by crises and indeed jumps from one to the next. September 11th, the 2007-09 financial crisis, climate disasters, the pandemic, Russia, Ukraine, the conflict in Gaza, and now the economic turmoil resulting from political events in the U.S. We don't always take the necessary time to learn from these events. Governing in the face of uncertainty will lead to over and under reactions, failures and setbacks, and highly contingent responses. We need a strong critical capacity to examine these events and better and more accountable processes to incorporate learning from them. Despite the frequent slogan to follow the science during the pandemic, as one of our roundtable guests noted at the time, science doesn't tell you what to do. Ethics tells you what to do. We need to be clear-minded about the values that guide our decisions and have principled and transparent ways to acknowledge and address disagreements and trade-offs. This is indeed a great honor for our team and the work of the McEachern Institute. We hope the book will serve as a useful record for what happened during the pandemic. Again, we'd like to thank the Donner Foundation for this recognition, the judges and our fellow nominees, and all those who supported us during the research. Thank you so much. Thank you.